Data design is all about taking the why and transforming it into the what and how. My project did just that in designing a citizen science project to collect data about winter recreation on the Gunnison National Forest. Before we dive into the nitty gritty of my project, I want to gloss over the background of winter travel management. In 2015, after a 2013 lawsuit, the Forest Service passed a rule saying that any national forest receiving appreciable snowfall in winter months needed to designate areas where oversnow vehicle use, or OSV use, could happen. Under this rule, the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forests, otherwise known as the GMUG, that travel plan was inadequate. So, at some point in the future, the GMUG will have to do forest-wide winter travel management planning. Right now, it's not a front burner project for the Forest Service, but rest assured it will have to happen at some point. Currently, OSV planning on the Gunnison National Forest focuses on just a small part of the national forest, around the winter sports hub of Crested Butte. As a result, nearly all of the time and energy spent collecting data and learning about winter recreation on the Gunnison National Forest has focused on just a handful of drainages in that area. But the GMUG encompasses a much vaster tract of land than that. Even if we just hone in on the Gunnison National Forest and forget about the Grand Mesa and Uncompahgre National Forests, which is what I did for my project, there's a lot of area we miss by focusing just on Crested Butte. What about this massive chunk of land in the West Elks? What about the area around Lake City and the folks who recreate down there? What about the Highway 50 corridor over Monarch Pass? Anecdotally, we know that area is really growing in popularity for winter recreators. The truth is, we really don't know that much about how we use the Gunnison National Forest in the winter, and herein lies my project. Much of my early forays into ideating this project were during my experience helping Dr. Armstrong and Dr. Knapp organize a winter travel management learning series in the fall of 2018. That same fall, we focused on winter travel management during ENVS 611 with Dr. Knapp as well. At the learning series, I was exposed to a whole lot of community desire to engage in winter travel management. People really wanted to be involved in the future of the forests they love to recreate on. In 611, as many of you know, we learn about stakeholder analysis and engagement, among many other things. Both of those experiences made it clear to me that the best way to go about informing an OSV planning process on the Gunnison National Forest would be to involve citizens and make it part of what could ultimately be an open, accessible, and engaging Forest Service planning effort. With a little bit of outside help, this project quickly became based in citizen science. Not only could citizen science allow community members to participate in the data collection that needs to occur before forest planning, but it could also give historically conflicted winter recreation groups some common snow to collaborate on. But there were still so many questions I had surrounding a citizen science project. What data would we try to collect? What methods would we need to use to collect that data? Was citizen science even an effective way to do this in the first place? Deciding to devote my MEM project to designing a citizen science project meant that I could try to whittle down the answers to these questions. So I divided the design process up into 4 phases. First, I would do a ton of background research on OSV planning, on U.S. Forest Service recreation management, on the Gunnison National Forest, on winter recreation data collection, and on citizen science itself. Then I would start to engage the public in the project design through outreach and public workshops before deciding on a method to field test in the spring of this year. I would finally outline that method in a project guide for anyone who wanted to take on managing a citizen science effort in the future. A continuous part of this project involved determining the what of data collection. That is, what do we want to know about the way we recreate on the National Forest in the winter? I worked with my project sponsors, Matt Vasquez and Aaron Drendel of the Gunnison Ranger District, to determine what the U.S. Forest Service needed to know about winter recreation in order to best serve them during the planning process. Aaron, who's the recreation officer, was able to tell me that the winter recreation data he had access to is super limited and also really old. Matt, who's the wildlife specialist, said he'd take any and all winter wildlife data that citizen scientists could collect. I also worked with stakeholders in the public workshops, as well as at recreation group meetings and in more informal one-on-one conversations to identify what everyone else wanted to know. This was kind of a huge community-wide brainstorming process to throw everything at the wall and distill it down into one feasible project. What did those public workshops app actually look like? From the beginning of my project, I wanted these workshops to be a venue in which community members could continue the passionate discussion held in the 2018 Learning Series. However, I decided that the workshop format needed to be a bit more structured so that we could start to narrow down a project design over the course of just 3 evening sessions. The workshop ended up being a mix of me presenting useful information I had found in my research and brainstorming in small groups over different questions I had for them. These workshops ultimately ended up providing valuable feedback and input to further developing the project design. And this brings me to the how, the project design that came out of this year-long effort. From very early on in my research, it became clear to me that an app might just be the best solution to this design problem. There are a ton of data collection apps out there, from iNaturalist to Merlin Birdwatch to Mountain Project. Basically, collecting data from a ton of laypeople with smartphones has never been easier than it is today. However, none of these apps really had the right combination of features that I thought we would need for this particular data collection effort. Plus, many of them are meant to share the data collected with anyone and everyone, and I kind of thought that the Powder Stash Protective Winter Recreators may not be too enthusiastic about contributing using one of those apps. So I spent a ton of time revisiting other methods of citizen science. Detailed field work requiring volunteer training, hard copies of illegible field notes that someone has to decipher through the water stains. None of those options really seemed accessible or useful for data collection that I wanted to do. The public workshops ended up providing a ton of clarity as to what route to go. As I expected, people were very concerned about data privacy, but they were also very interested in the ability to house the data somewhere secure and where it could be systematically monitored and analyzed by a project administrator. Although I had dismissed Survey 123 originally as being not right for this project, a couple of workshop participants brought it up as a tool they'd used in the past and pointed out some app features that could really benefit this project. This encouraged me to do some more research into the app, and I found that it was not only accessible and easy for the public to use, but it was super easy to store data securely and analyze on the back end. Plus, Survey 123's ability to customize surveys could help address the wide range of data we wanted to collect about the Gunnison National Forest. And because the app is made by Esri to be compatible with ArcGIS software, the possibilities of making data compatible with GIS mapping are endless. There's even a mapping tool that was in beta testing during our field testing period. After engaging workshop participants to help refine the Survey 123 platform to this project's needs, it was time to send it out for a round of field testing. I advertised a field testing period that ran from March 3rd through April 5th. The field testing period started out great. I had several people take the app out for a spin on their recreational outings. Then, dun dun dun, coronavirus happened. While I'm never really heard from anyone if the pandemic affected their ability to participate in the field test, it certainly took most people's minds off this citizen science project, winter recreation, and on to way more important things. All told, I ended up having about 10 users other than myself submit data using Survey 123 during the field testing period, and that was kind of fewer than I had hoped for. Everyone who did participate said that the app worked well, although a few field testers who tried using the mapping tool that was in beta testing at the time said that it was a little tricky on a smartphone. But overall, the field testing period went well. So I decided it was time to take the information I had gathered and just roll with it. I developed an 18-page project guide for a citizen science project that both documents my design process and the next steps for carrying out a citizen science project. So, did our stakeholders end up developing the engagement, ownership, and collaboration I had hoped to instill through this project? Not quite. It will take many, many more years of continuing these discussions and the outreach that supports them. But it is my deep hope that the conversations that I had throughout the course of this project are just the beginning of the process. Thank you so much to my project sponsors, my advisor, and everyone else who helped with the ideation of this project. Most of all, thank you to the winter recreators whose passion for place inspired this project from the beginning. Thank you. Are there any questions?